Welcome, everybody. We're going to be doing the second part of the exercises for Unit 3. If you recall, we worked our way up through number 3 and completed number 3. So we have two more exercises to complete to call this done. We're going to be working on number 4 here. I have preemptively in the background started my SQL server locally on my machine. MySQL Workbench is up and running with the SQL file I was working on last week. And I have my instruction set here and I'm ready to code. So let's begin by just reading the instructions. It says, modify the query in number 1 to include the order date from the order table and only display those orders with an order date less than January 1st, 2004. And we haven't really kind of done that before. So this is kind of a matter of demonstration. It's not that you can't figure this out on your own. There are examples online through W3 Schools and other places. But let's take a look first at what number 1 was and then kind of adjust from there. So number 1, if you recall, really what we were doing here is basically aliasing, right? And I did it kind of out of order, if you remember last week a little bit. So I consider, this is really the final version of number 1. So I'm just going to copy this as is and move it down to the bottom. I might make some adjustments to it, but we'll see. All right, so we'll just go dash, and then I'm going to say space number 4. And then I'm going to paste in the original version of number 1, which, if you notice, isn't that much different from what's right above us. And real frankly, isn't it maybe better, and I'm just saying it out loud, I mean, I'm aliasing the table names up here, then I'm noticing, but I'm not doing it here. That's kind of silly to go backwards. Why don't we add the aliasing just to make it get a little practice at it, basically. So wherever I put in orders, that'll be replaced with O, and wherever I put in customers as a table name will be replaced as C. Okay. So that's part 1. We do have order number here. Now, I don't know if you guys recall like where we pulled this from, but number 3 is a little bit of a clue. When we're pulling in the order number, we are pulling it from the orders table. And I think it's really better practice, frankly, to put that O in front of it, just so when we look at this, we can go, oh yeah, it's coming from the orders table. I see it, right? It's not a guess. It's not that it won't work without, because here's the why. This is definitely coming from the orders table because we're telling it to come from the orders table, right? And that's where it goes to first, is it goes to this first table. But we know this one actually is coming from the customers table through the inner join. So here's where I think it really helps, right? So we know it's coming from a different table. Granted, the tables are joined. That's fine. All right. The other little tweak that we'll make here, because this is still going to be part of it, right, is we're still going to have an order by customer name, but what we're really going to be adding here is one additional criteria. That's really all we're doing. But you notice I'm doing that conversion to the aliasing just to kind of get that syntax flow kind of going. All right, so if the one criteria is that the customer number in the order table equals the customer number in the customer table, then they're asking us for the order date to come or to be less than a certain date, right? And what was that again? January 1st or something like that. January 1st, 2004. All right, well, that's kind of old, but hey, we could make it 2024 if we wanted, I guess. All right, so I'm going to add a second condition here. So if you guys remember, we talked about and, or, and not last time, and I'm going to do an and here, meaning that this condition has to be true. So they have to have placed an order, and it had to be before a particular date. Now I'm going to say order date, right? And now the question is, what table is this coming from? I think it's kind of intuitive, right? Makes sense it would come from the orders table. So doesn't it make sense here to do a O in front of it, right? So once again, maybe it's intuitive, but isn't it easier to go, oh yeah, this is it. That's where it came from. I know because of that alias. And what's kind of interesting here is we can use what we call regular mathematical expressions. This is a less than sign. So if we want to indicate before a certain date inside of quotes, and I'm going to use single quotes here, by the way. I'm going to do 2001 01 01. And I want you to be mindful of this. This is how SQL stores the dates, not the way that we're used to writing them. So, for example, if I wrote January 1st, 2004, I would normally go 01 2004, right? And I said 2001 here. Okay, we'll fix that. But if, let's say I said January 2nd instead, I would go 01 02 2004, right? That's how we would write it, you know, here in America, as we say. So normally, so my point would be that we would write 01/02 slash 2004, right? Did you guys know that if you travel across the ocean and go to Europe and you show them this date, what date is this for them? It's not January 2nd, it's February 1st, right? When you do it this way. So they do day, month, year. Now, if you ever have tried this, right, and I've encountered this a few times in coding, and this is a classic programming problem, by the way, how do you sort dates when they're in this format? It's really difficult because it won't sort like a number. You have to sort each character separately and then stitch them together and yada yada. It's a pain. But if you reverse the order of the date and you go year, month, day, it's super easy to organize them sequentially or reverse sequentially and to do comparisons. And this is why SQL does this, by the way, is because by using this format, we can use logical operators that like less than and go, oh, as long as it came before this date, we're okay. And this is just how the data is stored in the system. So even if you're comfortable doing it one way, SQL is storing it this way. And so when you write your statements, you have to write it that way too, right? So, okay, a little bit long-winded, but that's pretty normal though. So we shouldn't make this naive assumption, right, that the way that we write dates here in the US, which is month, day, year, is how the rest of the world does it. In fact, most of the rest of the world does it day, month, year, right? And then all the geeky people who are computer people usually do it in reverse order, year, month, day, because from a coding standpoint, this is a lot smarter, you know, in terms of organizing data. All right, a little long-winded, but here's the query. And I think that's all. I think we got everything in there, but I think there was one other piece that we might be missing here because modify the query to include the order date, because I didn't do that, from the order table and only display those orders with an order. Okay, so I got to add the order date piece. I did not do that. So here I grabbed the order number, I grabbed the customer name, I aliased both of them, and I really want to add one more piece of information. They told me what to add and what table it comes from. So I'm going to add a comma, and then I'm going to do, it comes from the orders table, so it's an O, and they want me to add the order date. And think about it. How can I process the order date if I'm not querying it, right? Absolutely. And you know what? That's not a very user-friendly appearance to the name. So you could give it an alias and do something like order date or date of order or whatever, you know, whatever you prefer. But there's the whole query if you wish. If this gets a little too wide for you, right, or if you're screenshotting it, you want to save a little screen space, you could kind of do this. And I'm just showing you the layout technique, right? And some coders will do this kind of stuff, right? They might choose to do it like this, right? As you select a bunch of fields, you start making a list. It's a lot easier to read. Okay, just have you consider that. All right. I think my query is complete at this point. I'm going to go ahead. My cursor's flashing inside the code. I'm going to use the lightning bolt on the right. And it says I got a problem. Okay, so let's read the error code. And once again, first order of business is don't freak out, read the message, and then fix it, right? Read what it says. And it says, and I know this is probably hard for you guys to read. I do not think I can zoom in on that, unfortunately. All right. Let me see if I can deselect it. Well, I can't deselect it. So it says select order number as customer, blah, 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 from orders. So the error code says no database selected. So what didn't I do? It says no database selected. Select the default database to be used by the double clicking its name in the schema. So in other words, I can activate which database I'm doing my query on by clicking on it in the sidebar. However, right, this was my first thing I did today in MySQL. I should have ran this statement first. That's the right. So if you get this error, you think my query's right. I know my query's right. Why isn't it working? Run the use statement. So I'm running the use statement. Now I'm going to go back down to number 4 here. Just put my cursor anywhere in there, hit the run, and now you see it works. And I have output. All right. So I was not attached to the table, and therefore I was not seeing the output. But here you go. Notice the date order, right? Now, were all of these orders before 2004? Yes, they were. They sure were. There's nothing past it. All right. So that's number 4. Let's move on to number 5. Is everybody okay with that one? Any questions on that one? Good. All right. Let's read the last little bits of instructions there. Number 5 says display the product name, products, quantity ordered, order details. So what do you think the parentheses and the bold mean? Those are our tables, right? That's what they're referring to there. And price each from the orders table. 3 different tables here that we're pulling from for a very particular order number. And it says use the order details, products, and orders table, right? So they're kind of clarifying that for you. All right, so let's see if we can build this one step at a time. And you know what? I might forget these instructions. So I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to come back over to MySQL Workbench here, and I'm going to do the CSS style comment marks here, like so. And I'm going to paste in the instructions so I can read them. And I'm going to go, oh my God, they're way too wide. I'm going to put in a couple of carriage returns here. There we go. But now I don't have to bounce back and forth and go, which table was that? All right. So I am going to write a select statement, and I'm going to select a bunch of fields. They told us what to select, by the way, but I'm going to select them from 3 different tables, and I want to alias all the tables. So I'm going to do that first. And this is kind of like one of my personal quirks when I code in SQL. Whenever I do from statements and I'm aliasing tables, I skip the select statement. I go to the from statement, list all my tables, and then go back to the select statement and select my columns because my brain thinks in that hierarchy, right? So this is just how I proceed. You do not have to work this way. All right. So first, I'm going to grab the order details table. And which database are we on? Classic models. I can look at the tables. I can see how the names are spelled. I can see which columns are inside there. I just want to refresh your memory that you don't have to go, what are the columns? Do you have to run a query and see? No, you can just click on the schema table here and get the data. All right. I'm going to collapse down this output. All right. So from order details, and I'm going to call that one OD. Now, why? Because I already have an orders that I was using O for. And this one, it's got 2 words, order details. Okay, so that's for order details. And then we'll also have products, which we'll call P, and orders, which we'll call O. All right, so now I'm going to go back up, and I'm going to select my columns. And it tells me which columns to select already. From the product table, I'm going to select the product name. And once again, just to show you, I'm not pulling it out of thin air. If I click on products table, I can see product name, how it's spelled. So I'm adding it just the same way. All right. Do I want to alias it? I'll tell you what, if you want to, go ahead. If it's kind of a matter of preference at this point, I'm not going to, just to save time, but if you did in your homework, fantastic. If you didn't, no big deal. Then from the orders detail table, we're going to grab the column called quantity ordered, right? Notice the OD prefix. And then we're also from that same table going to pull the price each. All right. So some of you are already yelling at me going, but it says to get it from the orders table, right? Let's go to the orders table. Does the orders table have a price each? I ran into this last semester. So this is kind of and I apologize, a little bit of a trick. And I'm sure some of you will tell me in your homework, if you've already turned it in, hey, by the way, there's an error in your assignment. Now, it's kind of a little bit of a test, real frankly, because I wanted you to look, which is why I'm also very coincidentally telling you, like, how do I find my column names? Oh, you've got to click. You got to click through. All right. But then that begs a secondary question. Then why connect to three tables? There's got to be a reason for it. And it's because I want to make sure that the order table is actually holding the orders, even though the columns that we're looking at are coming from the two other tables. You see what I see the logic there, right? So I'll look at output from certain tables, but before I look at that output, I want to confirm that that data, there's actually an order related to it. Otherwise, what's the point, right? I don't have to show the order number or anything. I just want to see the product name, amount ordered, and what it cost. Okay. So that's kind of the methodology of how my brain is thinking about this and where I'm trying to guide you guys to. All right. We were given certain criteria. So the one thing is we're going to have to look at the orders detail table here where the product code equals the product code over in the products table. So that will require the P prefix, right? So when you place an order, we're pulling the product code from the product table, but the detail table for the orders will show just the product code. So it's not going to give you all the information about the product. It's the link. You feel where that's going, right? It's just linking to that table. We're also needing, if you think about this, to have a couple of other criteria. So the product is in the product table, or the order one that's being ordered is in the product table, but we also need to match up the order detail table over to the orders table. So we're going to throw in an and again. So this needs to be true also. And that is where the order number equals the order number in the orders table. And I was meaning to type O, not 0 there. Basically to ensure that they're connected. They're both there. And well, we were given even a deeper ask, not only that they're in both spots, but now we're looking for a certain order. And I know that some of you may have figured out a more clever way to do this, right? And if you did it a different way, I am totally cool with that, provided you got the same results. So in other words, what I'm telling you, if you start to break down the logic of how you're pulling the information out, maybe your brain is saying, well, aren't we just looking for this anyhow? Could I just query this? Right? You could, but what if that information didn't exist in the other table? So I'm kind of like writing my query a little bit more complexly because I don't want to show this order if it's not really an order, right? Like maybe, okay, so like what if the customer started the order and didn't like abandon their shopping cart online or something like that? That's kind of like where my brain goes. All right, let's try this and see what the output is, right? And see if it matches what we're looking for. We want the product name, quantity ordered, and price for just that one order. All right, let's run it. Here comes the run. All right. And what did I get as an output here? It says, um, select P product name, OD, blah, 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 error code, classic models product doesn't exist. Okay. Now, this is an honest mistake. Sometimes I do mistakes on purpose, and sometimes I do them with the intent of not on purpose, basically. But sometimes I do them on purpose to kind of make a point, and this is kind of making a point indirectly. Once again, I'm getting an error message, and it's saying classic models product doesn't exist because the table is actually called what? Products with an S, right? Details. And I know this is very small on your screen, and unfortunately, I can't zoom in on these panels here. So here, where I'm calling in the product table, I don't have to change any of my aliases, but it kind of leads to a good teaching point. Here's the teaching point. If I use the alias everywhere in my SQL code, and let's say I did it okay, here, I'm only using it twice for products. But what if I had 20 references and I'm using the aliases, but in the original aliasing, I spelled the product table name wrong? I only have to fix one character. I don't have to go to 20 entries and go, oh, yeah, it's products, not product, and retype product 20 times. And I get it. There is find and replace, right? You can use that in a coding engine, just like a word processor. But there's a different advantage, to that. And mistakes sometimes lead us to revelations. So, all right, here goes. And here's the output. And then what we could do here, by the way, is we could backtrace this information and just verify that it's correct. And what I'm trying to do is get it all on the screen at the same time to show the entirety of the code and the entirety of the output all at once. But apparently when this person ordered this stuff, right? And I'm assuming, I mean, these can't be motorcycles, I'm assuming, right? We don't really know. I mean, because a motorcycle is going to cost more than $80, but it's probably like parts for a motorcycle or something like that. Or maybe it's a model of a motorcycle. I don't really even know. Regardless, if we were to backtrace and look at that particular order, we would see that this is what was included in that order. That's the point. Any questions on this one, anybody? You guys all good? All right, we're going to call this a wrap. So this is the solution, and this video ends here.